So, welcome back to everybody. I wanted to just kind of get things started off real quick here and just let you know kind of who I am. You can see my name over here. So, Chris Simmons, I am the creator and core maintainer of Skeleton. We are a UI toolkit for Svelte and Tailwind. I'm sure a lot of folks have seen this. If you are new, however, to our library, I will kind of encourage you that to go watch a stream that we did earlier today. We've got a video up of us streaming a few hours ago, just kind of introducing a lot of this stuff. But I wanted to kind of go over that real quick, just to kind of set the stage of what's going on here. So, again, I mentioned UI toolkit. We're building for Svelte and Tailwind. The general idea is if you are starting with Svelte and you are looking at the kind of ecosystem out there, you may see that there are options for building UI and things like that, but they're kind of different levels of quality. Some stuff's kind of been abandoned or whatever, and so it's we can't kind of keep hearing the same thing that, hey, it's cool. Here's a modern tool that's currently being maintained, and so that's us. We're those guys. And then kind of on the stream earlier today, we also talked a little bit about how the project got started. The general idea was we were building this for a startup that I worked at last year called Brain and Bones, and we were building this as a sort of a solution for how we wanted to create our UI and interfaces for our tools inside of the company. And so we kind of right out of the gate sort of knew, like, oh, we've got something. This is going to be substantial. This is going to be a really nice component library. And then ever since then, it's sort of snowballed into kind of what the project is today. And so come August of this last year, we ended up open sourcing the project. We launched with a number of different components and things like that. We've grown since we've added different ways to kind of set up the project, including like a CLI to make the process very easy and that kind of thing. And we covered a little bit of that earlier today as well. Like, if you are new to Skeleton, we offer a few different ways to kind of get started. And so I can kind of switch over and just kind of show you some visuals on some of this real quick. So if you've not been to our website, it's, let me switch over to the correct one here, skeleton.dev. So very easy to remember. We have a big green Get Started button right here you can press, and then this will just kind of walk you through the onboarding process, either a manual install, which is a little bit more involved. And again, we kind of talked through a little bit on the stream this morning for some of that. The CLI, which is a very automated way, you can essentially just run like a one-line command. It'll prompt you for various different settings, and will install everything you need. So if you're using Skeleton, you need Svelte and Svelte Kit, and so it'll install those. You need Tailwind, it'll install that automatically. And of course, configure Skeleton itself and everything you need to kind of just get started really quickly. And then real quick, this is part of the update that dropped today, which is the V1 launch itself of the library. We've also offered this new option, which is a StackBlitz version. So I'm going to just click this and show this real quick because it runs pretty quickly, and it's a great kind of demonstration of sort of how quickly you can get into and start using Skeleton if you haven't already. So the StackBlitz just kind of creates a little like virtual instance of almost like a VS Code kind of code editor over here. It's all live. You can see the application running. That's your Skeleton UI components and things like that running over here. And then you can just kind of come in here and start editing files as you so choose. And then if you get to the point that you're like, I'm happy with that, I want to continue building with this, you can click this little like sign in button, connect to GitHub, and actually create a repository in your account that you can then kind of clone down to your workstation or however you want to do that, and just continue with that all the way to production. So one of the kind of cool new features we've launched today, A couple other additions that we dropped today. We also introduced, as you're seeing here, the new website, which is completely revamped. Really kind of goes into details, explaining the various features, kind of showing things off. It's very interactive, so you can really kind of see what sort of things we're offering, light and dark mode, all kinds of cool things. You can change the theme even and see the entire site update with that. It's just light and dark mode, all those kind of fun stuff. The other thing we kind of covered earlier today was the kind of, in addition to getting started, the sort of core essentials that you really need to know, talking about our color system, styling, so styling components and things like that, using Tailwind classes that you kind of drop right into these properties. We talked through design tokens and showed some cool examples with that, and also just kind of covered some of our variants, which are just quick and easy ways to drop in a single class that you get these like really kind of complex styling, very, very quickly and very easily. We did cover a couple other things, like we had a nice Q&A session, so some folks from the community reached out and said, hey, we have this question, that question. Would recommend checking that out. There was some really great stuff in that. And then we kind of wrapped it up with a section on Skeleton Labs, which is the company that myself and Trey Weir run, that lives alongside the open source project and just helps support it with things like sponsorship programs and support, and eventually some of the things we're building towards, like themes that you can purchase and some really cool stuff. So if you haven't already, definitely recommend checking that VOD out and just kind of going over all that, because there's some really cool stuff in there. As for today, for the tonight's stream, what my plan is I'm going to step away for just a moment. We'll pull up a quick kind of BRB screen, and I'm going to bring in one of the core contributors to the team, a guy named Rhys. And we're going to do some actual demos showing not only just a quick setup of Skeleton using the CLI, but then kind of go through and talk in detail about our theme system. So you saw me, switching between these themes, and then we have this kind of really cool like theme generator that we've made so that you can kind of really tweak the design and make Skeleton look and feel exactly how you want. And so we'll be covering that in depth, including several different, ways to use that, how to customize that, some beginner tips, some advanced tips, that kind of thing. So stick around and we will be right back. All right, everybody, and we're back. So I'm going to switch real quick here and introduce Rhys. Don't worry about Nick; he's up for later. So, as I mentioned earlier, Rhys is one of our core contributors. He's been around for gosh, I don't even remember when you joined. Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
sometime last
actually it
year,
was
right?
it was a while ago. It
Yeah,
was definitely last year.
yeah.
Probably I want to say like August or something around then.
Yeah. If that's the case, that was right when we started. So yeah.
Yeah.
So because there's several of you, like Nick as well, you, Luke, all got in like right at the beginning, and so
Mm.
have stuck around. So hopefully that means we're doing something right over here. So.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to bring Rhys on because he has been doing some tremendous work on helping us kind of augment this theme generator and this when the which is such a critical part for how Skeleton operates and how it works and how you customize it and make your application look in a particular way and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to switch over and just kind of show. I'm just going to kind of talk through it like as if you've kind of never seen it before, just so you have a gist and a frame of reference here of what it is and how it operates. Okay. So first things first, you can access it from a couple different ways. You can come straight from the home page and click this like create a theme button, or kind of go in here and find it down here in the theme generator under resources. When you come in, you're going to see all kinds of bright colors and it's stuff going on. We've got knobs and stuff all over the place, but it's very honestly pretty easy to get started. So you get this big like enable preview button. You're going to see a slight change on the page when we do that, and then you have a couple things that are a little familiar. Like we have the kind of light and dark toggle here. You've got that just kind of handy here. We've got this kind of cool randomize button, which I'm going to show off in just a second. And then you have all of your swatches for your various kind of colors. And we've given these colors these kind of like names that are not necessarily semantic to their role, but more of like a position so that you can kind of attribute whatever sort of, however you want to semantically kind of remember those in your head to describe that. And so primary is probably going to be your primary branding color. If you have a kind of an offset from that, like a secondary, tertiary, and so on. And then we have sort of like stuff that you might use in like a form, like success state, warning, error, that kind of thing. And then surface is a lot of what you're seeing on the screen now, like the backgrounds and these kind of like card elements, the containers and stuff. They're using that kind of grayish tone that's coming from the surface level. So real quick, we'll just I'm going to hit randomize a couple times just so you can kind of see what it does on the site, which is a lot of people's kind of favorite part of this, favorite feature. And so when we click this, you're going to immediately see, we describe Skeleton's theme system as being adaptive. And so you're going to see it kind of quickly just take on whatever sort of colors. And we may get some stuff that looks really cool, like this kind of bluish tone, or we get something that's like bright green or, that kind of thing. And the cool thing you're going to notice right away is we get this sort of, we're in the dark mode, right, for Tailwind. If we toggle over to light mode, we have that sort of, that tone is carrying across. So it's a lighter flavor of those tones, but it's the same kind of general idea. And so we could do like, here's a kind of a purpley, and then we go and we can kind of toggle back and forth and see that. And so the randomize button is literally just randomizing the whole set of colors there. And that's really cool. It's not very intelligent. That's something we're going to kind of be working on. That's some stuff that me and Rhys have been kind of talking through of like, how do we make this better? How do we make this maybe where you can just kind of like randomize certain colors at a time or that kind of thing. So just know we're kind of aware of that those kind of wants and desires for that. But I want to real quickly like get Rhys in here and talking about this cool new feature he's got. So I'm gonna let you kind of talk through the on colors or the text colors here over on the right side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, basically, what we've got here on the right-hand side, we've got the text and fill color. And these That's what the text that's displayed on top will default to. And it'll actually intelligently be able to tell you whether the contrast is good enough.
Right.
So this is the contrast is set out by the WCAG and is really important for general web accessibility. If we have things that don't contrast enough, then it's really difficult to read them, and yeah, it's just a really good thing to have inbuilt into the system, so you don't have to worry about oh no, is my theming actually going to be visible and accessible? Because here we've got instant feedback. You can see it's got a little pop-up that tells you, oops, that one doesn't necessarily work as well. This one does.
Yeah. So
it does all of that by some really cool maths that I won't go into. I'm not even remotely qualified to explain it.
Yeah.
But basically, we can derive the lightness of any given color, and we can compare that and see whether white or black or another color is considered to be contrasty enough to the color that we've got selected.
Yeah. And and the whole goal here with this is that we're just trying to make the colors accessible, because there's folks that suffer from various, either color blindness or low vision, or, these kind of things. And this won't necessarily solve all of those problems, but for the most part, it helps everybody. Like, even if you are not, you do not have an impairment for, your vision or something like that, it's still nice. Like, even this kind of quick demo here, like, it's so hard to see what is going on with this black text over here on this gray. So by default, we're kind of recommending this like white color, because it's just so much easier to see and so much easier just to understand what's going on. And the other thing we're doing with this is we're doing this per each color, right? So like each layer has this kind of contrast built into it. So you can kind of have that confidence of, if I switch from a primary down to a secondary somewhere in my, my buttons or something like that, that you're still going to have that text that's legible, or those icons that are legible, or that kind of thing. So yeah, that's that. And again, Rhys has done an amazing job just making that present that really well, where it's color graded. You get icons. You can hover over it if you want the kind of advanced information, right? And just super great. It works super well. Real quick, I'm going to kind of just go down a little bit further here and show you kind of, this starts tying into our design token system, which again, I talked through in great length earlier today, and I would encourage you to go check that out if you can. But I can show this off really quickly, which is, generally speaking, you set not just colors, but actual values. So that be that things like fonts. So if I change the heading font to, say, mono here, you're going to see immediately all the preview for anything that's using that heading changes to that. If I change the base font, so if I go to something like a serif font, you can see down here that's changing, and it's doing that again live with the preview we have with the theme generator, which is really cool. So you get that immediate feedback, and it just kind of lets you very quickly kind of see what's going on. So I can say, oh, I didn't really like that text. It was kind of hard to see, or maybe I want to go serif, or maybe I want to go sans for that, or system, or something like that. We just have a few canned options for fonts, but we will kind of cover that in just a moment, of how you can kind of go further and put your own custom fonts in there as well. So the other thing we've got is just the text color itself. So this is the base color. So if you're not using something that's necessarily overlapping, or what we kind of call an on color, like these are on this color, just something like this, just kind of loose on the page. That's what defines those color values, and you get to define that both for the light theme and the dark theme. So just a quick reference to that. We also, and this is one of my favorite, it's just the border radius, because it's so fun to watch. So when I change this, keep an eye on these little buttons, and and a couple of the little elements, the cards and things like that. So when I switch this, it's going to go straight to very blocky. And it does that all throughout the whole system because everything in Skeleton is kind of deriving itself from, theme to these design tokens that are ingested in the components, and then kind of what you actually see as the end result of all that. So it's fun to play with because it's just fun to see the buttons kind of change and kind of alter like that. And then likewise we have container, which is like these kind of like this is a container, like larger elements on the page. You can change those two things independently. And then the last bit is the border. So that's used in select places like inputs, where you can have like a real thick, crazy looking, border if you so choose, or just turn it off and have no border at all. So a few options there. We give you a few kind of components over here to the right to preview that. And it works pretty well. Like, you may be thinking like, oh, but how does that affect the other components in the library? And so we kind of, address that by allowing you to just, instead of just staying here, you can just really kind of browse anywhere you want in the entire application. And the theme generator, the current theme you're working on, will stay active in there. So you can continue to kind of come over here and see, okay, what does the accordion look like, and what does this look like, and what does what does the list look like, and things like that. So very quickly build a rudimentary theme, and then come through the entire application and see how that's applied and how that looks. And so I'm going to randomize this a few times and try to get something that's a little nicer looking. I like that. That looks pretty cool. And so we can come over here and just, again, check out a few and kind of see like, okay, like that looks pretty cool, but what if we made it, the edges a little sharper or something like that, so nice and pointy. Yeah, there we go. And kind of we can just immediately see that kind of feedback throughout the entire system, and preview it, not just light theme, but dark theme as well. So just, again, immediate feedback to whatever you're testing here. And so real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Rhys just kind of talk through a little bit of like what we're doing here, but I'm going to set up a new CLI project, and so that we can actually maybe take this theme and pull it in, see what Skeleton looks like running, and then see our actual theme kind of being put into place here. So I'll hush and I'll let kind of Rhys maybe just kind of summarize, if you don't mind, what I'm doing here at this.
Absolutely, sure.
So.
I should just add, with the theme generation, we've got a lot of stuff planned.
Yes.
For post launch, we'll be figuring out a drag and drop component to be able to shift around. If you don't like, if you want to change the tertiary and primary, you'll be able to just drag and drop that in.
Yes.
This is. I didn't get the go ahead from Chris to mention that. So I hope that we're in alignment on that front.
Hey, I think we're both ideas guys. We've got all kinds of stuff kind of bouncing around that we want to test and try to get in there. So totally fair.
So Chris is just going through the CLI, which was built by Nick. And there are a lot of really, really handy options just to set up a solid boilerplate that will get you started on the right footing. So things like TypeScript versus JavaScript with JS doc, those come from the default Sveld CLI that has then been built upon. And it's been shifted over to CLAX, which is a very fancy new CLI tool, I believe. It's relatively new. Yeah.
Just came out. I think the SvelteKit CLI is now using it, and it was a tool originally created by Nate Moore, who is from the Astro team. So kind of another.
Oh, is
yeah.
Very nice.
So he's a busy guy. He gets all kinds of stuff, cool stuff to
work
on.
I just learned recently that Zod is by the same guy that does TRPC.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's just like, when do these guys sleep? That's what I would like to know. But real quick, I'm gonna switch to the last step here, because what we've done here is we've set up some of kind of the recommended settings that I'm gonna that I usually recommend if you're just kind of getting started. Use TypeScript. We're not gonna use any of the optional stuff like ESLint, Prettier. We're not gonna get into all of that. That's SvelteKit stuff that you can kind of check out on your own. But I did want to show this last step, which is when you set up a project with the CLI, it lets you pick from this kind of like can set of presets that we have. So that's that same list that you're kind of seeing here, or if you're in the install instructions, we kind of show you how to switch between those down here. But I wanted to show that because you when you're getting started, you're not going to see an option for installing custom theme or anything like that. We recommend you just go ahead and use a preset, because there's no cost to doing that, and it just kind of stubs out the place of where we're going to go and insert our custom theme here in a second. So for now, I'm just gonna use our default skeleton theme and choose I'm gonna choose the welcome page, which just has a few components and things like that on there for preview sake, and let that install. And so you're not having to. You may have noticed if you've used the SvelteKit CLI that you have to kind of go in and install the dependencies and do all that stuff yourself. We just kind of do that for you. And so it's going to tell, yeah, we're trying to make it easy. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. So I'm just going to cd into the new project directory we've created and do npm run dev. And then let's go take a look in our browser and see if this is running for us. And we're doing this live, so fingers crossed. Hey, everything's working. So just to summarize, I kind of went through it quickly earlier. What that's done is the CLI kind of in the background is installing SvelteKit, it's installing Tailwind, it's installing Skeleton, and it's running, all the configuration needed for any of the things that it prompted you for, as well as the configuration needed for Skeleton itself. So it's just kind of boop, 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 doing all that for you real quick in the background, okay? And the end result is you just get a SvelteKit application that then looks, something like this. And if we open the project, let me do that real quick. And VS Code. There we go. You should be able to see VS Code. Looks just exactly like you would expect. It's just a standard SvelteKit application. Nothing crazy. Just you may notice a couple of config files that aren't normally there, like the Tailwind config is just automatically there for you. And there's a couple just recommended settings that the CLI kind of just puts in place for you, okay? But the thing we're interested in here is, remember, we chose one of those preset themes, but we want to be able to kind of replace that with the theme we're about to generate. So I need to show you real quick where that theme is put. And so if you open your routes and your route layout here, there's a few files that have been imported here at the top. We have the theme file, which is the one we're looking for. We have a style sheet that we're importing to kind of support some of the things for Skeleton. And then you have your app.postcss, which is just your global style sheet that you could use for whatever kind of styles that you want to put in there. We kind of mentioned that it was setting up a few things on the page for you. So you see a couple components here for structural things like the app bar and the app shell for the layout. And those are just kind of imported here at the top. So you're pretty much all caught up. That's where we are. But the thing that we're most concerned with is this portion right here. And so what we can do with this real quick is, if I was to go here and change this to say, I don't know, modern, which is another one of the themes that we have, I can save that. I can run our server again, and then switch over to the browser, and we should see that kick over. So as soon as the server starts up again, boom. The new theme that I just switched over, the preset is now visible on the screen. So we know Skeleton's working, we know themes are working. We just need to do the next part, which is creating one of these custom themes. And so the quickest way we can do this is, of course, using our fun little randomize tool. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. I'm just going to come back to the theme generator, turn on the preview. We're going to hit randomize a few times. Hey, that one's kind of cool. It's kind of different. May not look super great. Oh, it looks pretty good, light theme. So I think that'll work. Let's just call that good. Just kind of get started. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. And Rhys, if you maybe want to talk through kind of what I'm doing here, of like where I'm going to put this file and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so basically, the Show Theme CSS button gives you that whole CSS file with a little copy button, and then that goes in. And these are all of the CSS variables that we use. And you'll notice that they look a bit funky. We've got three numbers in a row, and this is because Tailwind expects, uh, in order to get the opacity working right, we need to do a little bit of shimmying around. So uh, actually, I didn't work on that bit. I think that was already there. I
Yeah.
think you did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Most likely, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
yeah. Who knows at this point? Who knows? But we have the file in, so that's the
Yeah.
first part. And if you're kind of curious, the location of where I'm dropping that, just straight in the source file, right next to where your global style sheet is. So app.postcss and then theme custom. You can name that whatever you want. I'm just calling that so it's really obvious. And then the next part is really easy, and we even kind of document this over here on the instructions. So if you've copied that, you can kind of get it out of your way. And we tell you just kind of go into your root layout here and just drop in that sort of import you just created, right? So I'm going to grab that real quick. I don't really need the comment. There we go.
And I should note that where we've got that defined on the root in the custom theme.css. So that's just a convention. You can actually be more specific. Placing CSS variables in root is just, because it's a relatively well-established place to put it. But if you had, for example, a component that you wanted to redefine all of the colors for, if you wanted to layer another theme inside of your a regular theme, then you could do that just by increasing the specificity of the container for those CSS variables. So you can also pass in CSS variables as arguments into Svelte components and HTML elements.
Yeah.
So it's a really flexible way of defining how we treat these design tokens. It means that we can put in overrides where we need them, but if we don't need those overrides, then it'll fall back gracefully to the ones that are at the root. So it's really that cascading style sheet is really at the forefront here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to talk through a little bit more of the specifics of where does this get applied, how is this consumed, how is this used, and all of that in just a moment. But again, I wanted to kind of show us real quick of what this looks like. So I've saved the theme; it's available here. I'm importing it. I haven't saved it in VS Code per the little dot telling me that. So I'm going to go back to our page, and then while that's visible, I'm going to save this so you can kind of see the switch over. And assuming I've done all this right, cross your fingers, we'll save and we'll see, boom, there's our new theme. So everything's there. We don't really have a way right now to toggle between the two light and dark modes. So I'm going to change this real quick. I'm just going to kind of nuke these links at the top. I'm going to import the light switch component, which is the component utility that we provide to make this a little easier to do. I'm going to save that, come back over here, and you can see the buttons up here have now disappeared, and we have this nice little toggle. So we can quickly check our light theme and make sure that all that looks good and everything's coming through. And so everything that we set, like the text being white here and black here, and this nice little like green tones are carrying through exactly like we were expecting and exactly like we wanted. So cool, thumbs up. That's, if you are not necessarily super creative, the randomization option is really great for this because it can actually produce some really fun, really nice quality stuff. Like sometimes it's like it can, it's luck of the draw. If you're a gambler, you might really enjoy this. So.
And I should add that it'll become more consistent.
Yes.
We didn't have time to put it in for the 1.0.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have planned is we're going to be implementing chroma.js. And what we'll be able to do with that is do a lot of color manipulation using real color theory. And so we can choose different color generation methods. We can have, complementary colors, opposite colors, all of that. And it'll also, we won't have colors that are really muddy and poor choices for primary colors, for example. We can sort of put some guardrails in that'll make it really reliable for generating, boom, quick color scheme.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was meaning to pull this up as just a frame of reference of kind of what we're talking about. So if you use this tool, it's called Colors with an extra O in there, and they kind of just generate a palette for you, and then you can hit like space on your keyboard and you get all these like really nice, they always just kind of complement and they look well together. Like you never really see one that's like, maybe I don't like that, but they all are fairly nicely balanced. You're not getting repeat colors. You're not getting some of the issues that you might get from just pure randomization. There's a little bit of a logic at play that's going on behind the scenes for that. So just a neat little frame of reference for that. So thank you for bringing that up, Rhys. So with that said, let's kind of do a quick kind of like deep dive into what is the theme. So Rhys has already kind of done a great job of sort of introducing some of these ideas of like, okay, so a theme file is just really, it's a CSS file, and inside that we're targeting root, which is the topmost element, if you want to think of it like that, within your selection tree. And then we have this, variety of named CSS properties, which are just another way of saying variables. They're CSS variables, right? And just like JavaScript variables or what have you, you have, your key and you have your value that you're kind of defining here. And so we sort of organize these with comments into different little groups. And so you see the first set is the items that I was demonstrating earlier, which is these various sort of like, presets for fonts and border radius and that kind of thing. But what's cool about this is they're just exported as, raw numeric values that you can come in here. So if you wanted this to be, I don't know, 7px, you could definitely do something like that, which is maybe not an option we kind of show as a canned option, but you can just come in here and edit that, willy-nilly however you would like. But we've got those settings. We've got those on colors, which is the kind of accessibility colors. So if you have your primary color as like a button, the text that's overlaying that, this is the value that's set for here. So there's a black, here's a white, and you can kind of see a mix of those right here. Typically, we just, for the randomized options, we just sort of lean into the easiest solution, which is it's either just going to be, binary. It's going to be black or it's going to be white, and that's good enough. But if you do actually come back to the theme generator, you can see, like, you can honestly pick any color you want. So if we want, this to be a different shade, like a secondary, like we could do something like that. There we go. Start to see a little bit of tone to it. So you can see something like that. And they're not necessarily, like, you're going to get some warnings because most of those aren't going to be really good combinations. So if you're just kind of getting started, maybe just stay with the simple options. These will help kind of keep you in that nice kind of safeguard of, accessibility for those tones there. And then the last set here is just really the colors themselves. So you see this sort of visualized grid of all the different color values. This is the same thing. It's just all of those kind of outlaid. So you see the name of the color, you see the original source color you provided. So if you go and generate a theme and then later you're like, what hex color did I use for that? I can't remember. We document that for you. And then we have each of the different shades here, all the way from 50 to 900. And then we even show like what the hex color is for that particular value, but the actual value that's consumed by the Tailwind plugin that we're generating and utilizing, and ingesting these with, that is done in RGB. And the reason we do that in that particular format is because it's what Tailwind recommends. So again, we're building a lot of this on the tools that Tailwind provides us. And their recommendation is to do RGB because it allows you to do something like, I can show a quick example, like this, where you can still use these raw values that we're generating, these properties, right? You can then call it as variable, so that's how you consume that in CSS or utilize that. And then that's just dropped into an RGBA so that you can still kind of customize that opacity layer, right? The how transparent it is in that fourth channel there. Now, you can do this in Tailwind with preset like orange or red or whatever the colors they provide you. They just have a little syntax for the utility class where you put in the color value / and then whatever the opacity. So this little bit right here, that's why we do the RGB format, because if they were in hex, you wouldn't have access to that opacity, right? That alpha channel. So you would not have access to be able to make your colors semi-transparent if hopefully that all makes sense. So.
But the beauty of it is that you don't really need to worry about what values your colors are stored in.
Yeah.
It's all handled behind the scenes.
Yes. Yeah, it's really only relevant if you're a power user. That's just like, I want to change that one particular shade, like this one right here. I want the very first iteration of this to be, I don't know, solid white or something else. Like, if you want to do that and the theme generator is just not quite getting you there, that might be a situation where you could come in and just directly edit that and change that if you want. Just again, make sure you do that conversion of like, it's not a hex color value, it's an RGB value. So make sure you adjust that.
Speaking of power users, do you want to go over how you set up Tailwind with this design system? Peek under the hood for the guts of it?
Yeah, and so there's a couple kind of cool bits here. So I've got Skeleton, the library, pulled up over here in another window. And so we can actually kind of jump in here and you can see that we have our Skeleton plugin. So when you install through the CLI, or you do a manual installation of Skeleton, it's going to import Tailwind. Tailwind has a config file, and then inside of here, one of the plugins that we're installing for you through the CLI is the Skeleton plugin. And so we can kind of see where that maps to in our library here. And what this is doing is it's actually pulling in a bunch of other sort of smaller modules, right? So we're pulling in things like your theme color. So we have part of the plugin that's being generated is then coming through and looking for these kind of named values like -- color primary 500 or whatever, and kind of using this sort of formula that Tailwind provides us to consume those and put those into to be ingested into Tailwind, so that Tailwind knows, hey, I have this available to use. So if you do something like you add a class like background primary 500, that's not a class that Tailwind typically knows about, right? So that has to be inserted some way. And so this is where that's happening. And you don't, again, this is a little bit advanced. It's not something you necessarily need to know, but it is relevant because we've had a couple of questions lately for this of somebody saying that, oh, I've got my theme, but I need so many more colors. I've got so many different values that I need to juggle. And then maybe feeling like they're boxed in, like they're limited to the set we provide. And that's definitely not the case. That's just the set that we provide, just so that we kind of have that context of, so we can build the components for you and have some idea of what colors are being, available and that kind of thing. But in just standard, regular Tailwind, they have their config file where you can come in here and go into the theme and then, start setting, like, I think it's colors. Yeah. And then you can start kind of building your own kind of colors and extending that out further. So you can still do that. All of that will be fine. And those utility classes that you're generating just through the normal Tailwind means, those are still applicable to use inside of the, your Svelte components or on buttons or, what have you that come from Skeleton itself. So you can certainly, the sky is the limit. You can have 1,000 colors in there if you really want. It's going to be hard to manage. It's not a really good design system if you do that, but Tailwind technically you can kind of do that sort of stuff. Okay, does that make sense? And then the other portion is I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna just again summarize it because it's really relevant here. Is we talk about this idea of like the design tokens and how we kind of balance the light and dark mode. But I wanted to show this, these two charts real quick, just again to kind of, sometimes it's easier to kind of digest this information if it's visual, is to kind of just summarize how this is kind of getting utilized in the system. So the very base level is you have this file, right? This theme CSS, and it's got all these CSS variables just kind of built and generated by the theme generator. And so what we do is we use that as the theme, and then we consume those into design tokens, which are a lot like utility classes. The kind of real kicker with them is that they're purpose built to consume the values here. So if you have a surface color, we need to have utility classes built so that you can quickly and easily use some combination of those different classes. So maybe you have a light mode of your surface color and a dark mode of your surface color, and that's kind of combined into a single class for you. So that's a design token, just in a quick nutshell. And then design tokens are interesting because those are what the defaults are for when we create our components in Skeleton. So when you have something like an avatar, right? And you have maybe a version that doesn't have an image, what is kind of the color that's being generated or used for that? And so behind the scenes, what it's doing, we can even kind of look at the source real quick for this. What it's doing is it's actually taking that token that we're generating that's consuming your theme values, and that's the defaults. So by sort of that, I like to think of it as like a snowballing kind of system, right? It's going through and kind of going through this process of theme, design tokens feed your components, and then you build your pages out of that. But what's cool is if you jump back at any part of that tree, like you come all the way back to your theme and switch that out, everything just kind of trickles down through the whole system, and everything updates, real quickly. And that's what you're seeing when we're like jumping between theme previews and like that, and everything's sort of updating in the screen. But I wanted to show, I mentioned, light and dark colors. I also wanted to show this real quick, which is, we have this palette of colors, right? So the lightest tones are over here, the darkest are over here. And what we do is we kind of pair those up. And what those do is it kind of gives an identity of when I'm in the dark mode, this color should be, lighter or darker or whatever. And then when I'm, flip around, it kind of has that pair that it knows. And so the easiest example of this is this background color. So in your dark mode, we're going to take this darkest tone, apply it here. But when you switch over to the lightest tone, we're going to go swoop over here and grab the pair over here. And then that is the value that's now kind of shown for that spot. And we do this in this kind of layered system so that you can get this kind of like visual hierarchy of like, this is the furthest back, and then this is a level up, and then this is a level up. And it just kind of stacks on top of each other, visually on almost like a Z-index kind of level sort of thing.
And what you could do is you could mimic this by putting in the primary 200, and then also add in a dark primary 700. But the benefit of combining this into the one token is basically, it's really reliable. You don't have to worry about human error. And also, sometimes you might want to have an element that is always going to be a specific color.
Yeah.
And so that's why we didn't just roll them all into the one token that would switch between the two. Because we recognize that sometimes you might need it to be the darkest dark.
Yeah.
Or the lightest light.
And I realize, like, I've talked through this, but I haven't really necessarily shown an example of these. So I'm just going to grab one real quick, and let's just demo it in our application. We've got it running here. So let's drop a design token in. So we have, let me see, let me change something on here real quick. So I'm going to just kind of delete the text here. I'm going to add a button. Let me switch to the code view so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to add a button. I'm going to add a class. So part of Skeleton offers these kind of can styles that will style that element to look in a certain way. So I'm going to save this button, and I'm going to come back over here and look. And you just get this really generic, you can't really even tell it's a button. It has a little, like animation when you click it, but it's not very, it doesn't really stand out, right? And so what I can do is I can use these design tokens to just kind of quickly like say, okay, I want a like a really cool like combination of these. So like I want a button that's just a little bit, kind of elevated necessarily from the background, or it's a particular, tone or whatever. And so I can do something where I'm like, okay, give me a background color that's primary, and then it's going to be maybe like 300. And then you can even see like this is something that when Nick comes in here in a minute, we'll talk through. Is this, we have kind of IntelliSense built in, so you're seeing these like suggestions of like, do you want just the base color, or do you want one of the token values? And if you hover over those, you're gonna kind of see what they're doing under the hood there, where it's taking the color and it's applying the, for either the light version or the dark version, it's applying 300 or 600, and just kind of gives you a quick insight into what that's doing. So if we click one of those, we'll see that applied. I'm going to save, and we're going to come back here, and we're going to see our nice kind of primarily colored button. And if I toggle, you're going to see it's very light because it's 300, and it's 600 here, so it's very dark. And so that's all sort of just kind of compacted into this nice little compact class, and that is what a design token is. Just kind of, again, just a quick demo of that. So there's all kinds of use cases for these. You can use them either as property, to something you can supply to like a button like this, or if you're building your own custom elements, you can do that. And what's cool is it's again, remember, it's kind of feeding back from that theme. So like if later down the road you decide, oh, I need to make all of my primary color, it's green now, but tomorrow it needs to be red, I can go change that in one place, and it will just kind of waterfall all the way down through everything. And then the shades are all going to be taken care of, and all of that just sort of works like like you would expect it and want it to, which is, again, part of why this is just such a really cool and neat system in here. So
you want to talk about the variant tokens?
Yeah. So we'll talk that just again. We went through some of this morning, so I don't want to repeat too much.
Oh, okay.
But we do have these kind of for sort of like very stylized things. So this would be something like it's the fill color, it's the primary 500 here, and it's applying that on color for you. So you immediately you can say like this is black, this is white, and it's getting that nice kind of accessibility contrast just kind of built in. And we have different variations of those styling. So we have semi-transparent with this, we've got kind of faded, we've got just the ring, we even have these like with the kind of backdrop blurred. So really kind of cool effect when you're on an image or something animated or something like that. So yeah, so that's that. The other thing I wanted to kind of go through is that's sort of some of your options there, and I wanted to kind of show where that's why we're creating these properties, where they're kind of being consumed and used within the tokens, and then how per what Rhys suggested, how we're kind of ingesting that into our system and kind of making those into classes that you can actually use within the Tailwind system. So that's all of that, but. The last couple of things I wanted to show real quick was just the theme stuff. This is, again, a little bit more advanced features, but some stuff that when you kind of grow to that point that you really want to have that fine-grained control, that we could kind of show you how far you can go with this. So I think the easiest way to show this, instead of this kind of like quickly generated randomized theme, is to maybe open a theme that's a little bit more mature. And so we've got these presets that we've built as part of the library system itself. And so I'm going to open, let's just open the skeleton one. And you can see it looks very familiar. We get the kind of familiar syntax, we get the colors and that kind of thing. But there's a little bit of extra kind of going up here at the top. We're doing an import. And we've got a couple things going down here with headings, and there's some kind of gradient thing going on. And, just these little bonuses that come as part of this. And so what we've done is there's a few things going on that's happened in this theme. So one of the first things we did was we maybe started with the theme generator, but we've kind of hand curated a lot of the colors within these particular shades. So like primary, those may not be the tones that the theme generator originally spit out, but we've gone in there and said, okay, I want this hex color to be a little lighter, maybe this a little darker, or have a little bit different tone or that kind of thing. So again, we really kind of fine tune those things, those color values, the different styles and things like that. We've just kind of made those very very kind of customized. If I open another theme like the modern theme, you're going to see a couple of those settings changed. This little bit up here, we're just importing a Google font through the Google Font is just a free service that Google provides that lets you have customized fonts. So if you wanna change it up, you don't want to go system or sans or these kind of basic kind of sort of defaults. You can change it up and really kind of put any fonts in there you want, and it supports both local fonts or remote fonts from like the Google Font service. But we're just importing them and then we're adding them as our base and our heading, and so you can kind of see those put in there. And so when we're over here and we're looking at our theme, and I'm going to turn off this so we can kind of see the presets here. We're looking at the modern theme. We can see these fonts have that custom font. They're not the sans or the sans serif or any of those that we were seeing from the kind of canned options. So we tweak the font values, very quick, easy to do. It's not unlike just setting font family in your like body tag or something like that for your global CSS. And then we've done a few other things down here. So I'm going to switch back over to the project and open our app.html, which is kind of like serves a similar purpose to like your index.html. It's the kind of entry point into the application. And you're going to see there's our body tag, and we put this little data attribute on here. And this has been applied as part of the CLI. It just kind of set this up for you based on the theme that we selected, right? So by default, this has put skeleton on here, but if we wanted to, we could change that to modern or whatever. And what that's going to do is if we look at the theme, we're targeting that data attribute. And so anything in the body, excuse me, will then have that heading style. So font is bold, or even in this case, a background image. So Rhys, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, just a second. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
So
there you go.
data theme is it's a data attribute, so it's native to HTML. And one of the benefits of using that is that we avoid a lot of the flickering and the flash of unstyled content sort of stuff that you'll often see a lot of JavaScript implementations come across.
Yeah.
So because it's all using native HTML and CSS, it's available at load. So you don't ever have that flash of the wrong theme, which is just hugely important if you're looking to build something at a professional standard.
Yeah. And it's the other cool thing is it's all opt-in. So you can use this modern theme, right? You can use this and just kind of have the colors applied, but it's only when you opt in to put this kind of attribute on your body tag that you then get the font bold and you get, this image that's being added to the background and that kind of thing. So it's very like, I always just call them bonus features, right? Like you can use them if you want, and if you don't, there's no cost to it, right? So it's there. It's not really a big deal if it's, you're not using it, but if you want, and you can put it in there. But I kind of skimmed over the bottom portion, the image here. What that's doing is that's applying this like mesh kind of, or this kind of, weird kind of gradient. Like it's kind of a light blue up here and it's sort of pink up here, and then it's back to the purple down here. That's an image that's being generated with CSS using these radial gradients. And so we kind of link to a tool that does a really good job of like not only visualizing that, this is the tool, it's called Mesher, visualizes what's going on. So you can see like you just get these little like gradient orbs that you can kind of move around, and you can kind of remove some of the options and maybe change like what's the base color kind of look like, and do some of the stuff. And so you can quickly kind of already start to see like what we're doing with some of our themes, where we have these kind of cool, I don't even know what to call it, kind of blurry, abstract kind of backgrounds that look kind of nice. And just even with just a couple tweaks there, we can get something that looks pretty cool. And then we can hit export there, and it just sort of outputs all of that we need. And so all we've done in our themes is just kind of tailor that in this nice little GUI, and then come in here and drop that. And in the modern theme specifically, we're doing a different gradient for the base, which is the light theme, and then the dark variation. So when you toggle between the light and dark modes between our modern theme here, you're going to see that mesh is very similar, but it's different. Like there's this purple that maybe just wasn't there on the dark version, and I think in this one they're very close. They're not too crazy, not too different. But just adds a little touch. That's just a little touch of color. It looks really nice. Just keeps our background from looking super flat and super dull. So cool way to kind of handle that.
And you could extend those even further if you wanted to animate them. Then you could use the CSS keyframes to shift things around, and there's a lot that you could do with it.
And you could do, we're showing a gradient here, right? But you could put an actual image, so you could have like a pattern image that's being repeated all over the place. I think one of our themes here, the one you actually created, Rhys, yeah. So you can see what we've done is we put a little pattern image background back there. It's very subtle. It may not carry across in the stream, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. Please try this in your browser and you'll see it. But just a real subtle kind of light, small dots and stuff in the background. And so that's another example. You could leave these off altogether. So like our Crimson theme does not have a background image applied. It's just the straight surface color. So it's very flat, but that works really well with that kind of dark tone that's coming through there. So, you can mix and match, decide what you want to add. But the concept here is really like if you want to add augmentations that are built into the theme and not something you have to set up every single time. You set up your project and you have to copy styles from your global style sheet and bring that over. You can kind of just bundle that up into the theme itself, and it's just a nice kind of convenience feature. Really is the best way to put it.
And of course, you can also do the opposite and override. If you really like the Hamlindigo theme, but you don't like the background, then you can override that.
Yeah, tweak it, change it,
increase the specificity, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So it's opt-in in both ways. You can say, oh, I like this bit, but I don't like that.
Yeah.
And you've got that flexibility to be able to pick and choose which parts you like.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad you mentioned that, because there may be some folks that are like, come in and they say, oh, I love the Crimson theme, but I want that button to be blue, right? And so this is still possible even with the presets. You can either do it the CSS way, where you kind of build in your overrides for that. But what I'm going to recommend for most folks is just come into, we might put this, we might need to put this in the docs or something. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. But some way to come in here and see the actual source code for the themes themselves, because you can just copy that, drop that in your project like we did a custom theme, and then you can tweak and change all of those values you want. So if you want to come in here and grab, I don't know, we've got a seasonal, we've got a rocket, come in here and just copy that, drop that into your a local version of that into your project, and then start going to town with it. I'm changing the fonts, changing the colors, changing whatever you want. And so it gives you like a foundation, that you can start with and sort of build off from there. So just another way to kind of go about that.
One of the takeaways is really that the themes that come stock standard with Skeleton, they're built with Skeleton.
Yes.
So there's nothing in those themes that you couldn't do yourself.
Yeah.
And it's all been streamlined to allow you to customize things just to your liking.
Yeah.
So if you want something that's a little bit more modern, a little bit sleeker, then that's totally doable.
Yeah.
And we actively want to encourage theme generation. We've
Yes.
got a showcase channel on our Discord server, and we'd love to see more people posting their themes there because it's
Yeah.
great to see what people can do with the design token system.
Yeah, because I mean, they're super portable. It's something that I think a lot of people could do with just for fun. Like we have, I hear that all the time. People are like, I just go to the theme generator and just hit randomize until I see some cool stuff. And so maybe you come up with a cool combination, or you take that and tweak that and customize that, and then you can go and drop that in there and just share that with somebody else, and maybe that's the theme that they then take and build their site with. So it's kind of a cool and kind of a community thing we can kind of do with that. But and again, for the sake of time, I just want to kind of go over one more thing real quick, and then we'll kind of switch gears. But at the bottom of the theme generator, we do show some kind of advanced tools for you. So there's a couple of things that are like quality of life stuff, like a link to this VS Code extension that will allow you to quickly change from like a hex color value over to RGB value. And there's just it's like a shortcut command that you press, and it'll just, yeah, there we go. Just, they show it in the little demo. It just switches that over for you. It'll do it with the format where it has the commas, but it's easy to tweak and change those. But it's much easier for it to do that for you than the conversion of the math and all that craziness. And then the
I'm
other
not sure
thing,
if it's standard.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm not sure if it's standard, but there's also an extension called Color Highlight, and that highlights web colors in VS Code, and that's
yeah,
super handy.
yeah,
It's got the little preview, little square,
yeah,
but that's another good one
yeah.
to keep.
And and again, I mentioned this mostly just because it's a quality of life kind of thing. Of like, if you don't have a Photoshop or some kind of design application on your computer, you may not have to want to go search around and do all that just to do a quick conversion. So just a kind of handy tool. And you can also do bulk conversions. So you can select 100 different hex colors and convert them all to RGB in a single click kind of thing. So. And then the other thing we link to, and again, just to kind of wrap this up, is the link to this palette generator tool, which kind of gives you all these sort of like advanced tools for like saturation, or is the color kind of generated based on luminance or lightness, and they give you this nice like visualization of the presentation of like, here's the midtone, right, the 500, here's everything, how everything's balanced. You can kind of like visually like sort of like start tweaking that and start seeing as like, oh, are you kind of crunching and getting the colors a little too close, because then you're going to start ending up with this where it's like you can't really tell the difference between them. So it kind of visualizes that that's a problem. You want to kind of keep these sort of like spaced out a little bit more if you can. So just a little bit more advanced tool. It will generate the colors in that hex format. And then, of course, you can use the tool we just talked about to kind of switch that over to the RGB. So a lot of the themes that we have in the preset, again, I may or may not have generated those originally with the generator, but I've taken and kind of customized and tweaked the values here to kind of generate these, and then I drop them in and then convert them, and then that's the version that you have maybe in the theme that you're using if you're using it in the presets. So just another option for how to go that kind of extra step further to really just have full control over how the palette's generated, how the colors are balanced and that kind of thing. And right now we're kind of referencing that out as like a third party thing, but that's the kind of stuff that I think me and Rhys and other contributors are very excited to build more of that into the theme generator itself, so that you don't have to go external and you don't have to go other places to be able to do that. So
Yeah, no, we'll be working on getting that sort of advanced color palette generation stuff in for the next major update.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And like there again, we have so many different ideas for how we want to do this. How do we improve the UI and UX of using the generator UI? The tool itself. How maybe stuff like we've kind of had that discussion of like importing the theme. So like maybe if somebody distributes their theme out to you, you can import that into the the tool, and then maybe fine tune it and tweak with this nice kind of visual interface. Just the sky's kind of the limit with what we can do with this. But we really want to just kind of sell the core of like the theme itself. It's just vanilla CSS. These are just properties and keys and values that you can go in there and tweak and change kind of to your heart's delight. But if you're somebody that's either kind of on the newer end of the spectrum or maybe not super design savvy, that just know that like we're still kind of building towards better automatic generation, but also these advanced controls and these advanced options for everybody. So yeah, so that's themes. So real quick, I'm going to switch over here so you can see Rhys, and just say thank you, Rhys, for joining me here and talking through all of this. Like we've managed to cover way more than I was even expecting. Like that's quite a bit, quite a gamut there we've covered.
But color gamut and the rest.
Yeah. And so, obviously kind of keep an eye on, either GitHub if you're a contributor or Discord. And you'll start to see as we start making some progress on some of those. Like you may start seeing some of that stuff sooner than later, because I just think it's something we kind of rotate out between the stuff we're working on. And I kind of feel like we're kind of getting back to that phase where like the themes kind of need a little bit more love and a little more attention.
Yeah.
So. But again, thank you for coming on. We're gonna do
thanks for having me.
Yeah. We're gonna step away for just a second, and then when I come back, we're gonna have Nick on, who is the block here, and just allow him to come on and introduce himself, and we're gonna talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So we've got everything from some of the cool tools that Nick's been working on or has built, things like the CLI, some of the IntelliSense features that we showcased a little bit earlier, and just generally kind of talk about things from the perspective of contributors and that kind of thing. So if you're a contributor or if you're interested in becoming a contributor, maybe join in for that. There should be some cool information. But again, we'll be right back, and thanks again, Rhys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah. right, everybody, and we're back. So I am joined by Nick, who, if you are not familiar with, is, as of I think this week, in fact, been bumped up to the second highest contributor to Skeleton. So I was joking with him earlier that he's finally pulling his weight around here, and we finally, finally getting him, putting him to work, kind of thing. But no, seriously, Nick has done a tremendous job on a number of different features and tools, and just different portions of Skeleton, both in the tech side and support side, and what have you. And so, just wanted to give him a chance to just kind of introduce himself, and maybe just tell me real quick, Nick, like, when did you join and how did you find Skeleton? Because I know you were one of the first, like Rhys, but I don't know that I've ever asked you. Where did you find out about us?
Yeah, so it was one of those perfect timing of like the universe just coming together in terms of what I was looking for and
Yeah.
just banging my head against and trying to figure out what was going on. So I actually joined August 7th, and I think it was pretty much your first Reddit post
Oh,
where
really? Really? Yeah.
you and Thomas both sort of announced, "Hey, we're here," and I was
Yeah.
like, "What I've been looking for." Ah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so look, my sort of background in terms of what was going on there. So I'm a bit more of a .NET developer over the years. That's sort of where I was at. I just found Blazor. Had been going through exactly the same thing. I just discovered Tailwind, and the integration between Blazor and Tailwind wasn't happening there. Trying to get the
Yeah.
JIT working, and obviously pruning. All the CSS, that was also an issue there. But I just sort of I've been avoiding JavaScript. It's not my favorite. It's not. I have bad memories of early web development. I'm like, just really don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And Blazor also has that lovely encapsulation of code, HTML, and CSS in one
Hmm.
file that Svelte had.
Yeah.
But it just came to that realization that you've either got the WASM payload, which is
Hmm.
just a killer for SEO, or you have a technical infrastructure debt of using SignalR if you want to do the whole sort of incremental updating, and they do a
Hmm.
diffing over the wire. And so that's why I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to go and check out the state of JS and HTML, and that's where, of course, came across Svelte. That's why I was in the Reddit, and
Hmm.
then I ran into probably exactly the same problem that a lot of us here drew us to this. Is like,
Yeah.
so I don't really want to be building everything from scratch. It's definitely
Yeah.
not my forte. And then you go, hey, we're using Tailwind and we're doing it in Svelte, and that is just that's what
Yeah.
brought me over. So, but clearly this is the first sort of big open source project that I've been heavily involved, other than just like, oh, thank you very much for the free stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what sort of started some very interesting learning curves and some very interesting
Yeah.
projects, as it were.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like I'm new to open source as well. Like I've worked, startups and, it's all proprietary systems and it's all closed source and that kind of stuff for, the better part of, 10 years for that specifically and even further out.
hmm.
And so the fact that like when we started pushing Skeleton, as open source, I was like, man, it might be cool if somebody comes and contributes, like even just like one person or a couple people. And so I was surprised one day to wake up and I had a pull request and it was from Nick changing just all kinds of stuff. I think you were like formatting or cleaning stuff up or whatever. And I was like, this is amazing because I don't have to do this. you know,
Yeah,
so
and it's also that natural thing. It's like you find something new, you're like, shiny new toy. I got to contribute, and obviously, over the last 6 months, I've learned probably not the best way to do it. Probably sink
yeah,
into the project a little bit more and understand what's going on and what the actual issues are. But
yeah,
yeah, it's that natural sort of enthusiasm that you sort of get when you find what you've been looking for. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and I've never told Nick this because I don't want to inflate his ego too much, but there wasn't. I always I use the term we when I talk about Skeleton. It's like we're building this, we're the team's building this, da 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 da. There really wasn't a we on the tech sides, especially until Nick came around, and so Nick kind of set the stage, and then folks like Luke, who's our moderators, and Dom, and all these other folks. Dom was on the stream earlier today. Just kind of followed in behind, and so it went from hey, I've got this really cool thing to hey, we have this really cool thing, and so I've just been so grateful to just have you on board and helping with all that because
Mm.
some of this stuff that you've contributed, it's just some of the coolest features that we have, and it's really kind of putting us on the cutting edge of like what Skeleton is and how it works, and even like quality of life stuff for me and how we build it. Like one of the things we wanted to talk about, for example, was this introduction of Sveld, and I don't remember if it was Rhys who was just on or you that found it, but it was such a cool tool, and so maybe give you a chance to kind of introduce that and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Again, it's just one of those things that's sort of lost to the history of time. I know that we're all sort of like, oh, is there something here? Is there
Yeah.
not? And I think that's one of the things that sort of, you know, I find myself is pretty good at it, is, you know, just being able to do that investigation, go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Is there really something there? So, because this is one of the things that kind of surprised me, you know, even though there are multiple UI frameworks out there for Svelte and SvelteKit, we're actually the only ones on SvelteKit proper.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Carbon Components, that's still a pure Svelte play using roll-up plugins and everything like that. And their CLI only works that way. It actually doesn't work with SvelteKit.
Yeah.
So that's why we were sort of umming and ahhing, like, this is great, but can we actually use it? Turns out, yes. Turns out there's some caveats. It turns out there's some weird little things we've got to do with JS doc blocks. I guess just to summarize, you know, Chris may be doing a hell of a job, you know, actually creating all the components and the design token systems that we use, but it's pointless if you don't have a good doc site and you don't have good examples and you don't have, you know, the follow-up support to actually guide users in how to do that. And it's a lot more time consuming than I ever expected or any of us ever expected.
And it's I like to kind of describe it as like it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole, right? Like you fix this, oh, this is documented, oh, I forgot this, or this there's a regression or a change or whatever. And so just the logistics alone for how you manage the documentation to convey that information to the end users is a whole challenge in itself. And so that's, you know, where kind of Sveld came in and has really kind of saved our bacon in a lot of regards. Of it makes our life so much easier with a very minimal amount of effort, you know, for us on the actual maintenance portion. So,
and that's an actual common theme you're going to see with all the stuff I've touched. I'm lazy and I hate doing repetitive things over and over again. So by the time you're going through the docs for the second, third time, going, oh, Chris is not that great a typer, and he's got the basic little things, and he missed this property. So what Sveld does is pretty much analyze the components, automatically extract the props and the documents associated with it, and gives it to you in a nice, basically mapped out object, so we can then just automatically splat it straight to the doc page without having to update it every single time there's a change there. So, and that's the same with the IntelliSense stuff. It's the same with the CLI. My God, the amount of times we set up the project to try and replicate someone's issue, and I'm like, can't do this again. This has got to be automated.
Yeah, and you know that's the part where like a lot of people come in and they look at Skeleton. And I think they think it's a much bigger team behind the scenes that's building and maintaining it, because the scale and the scope is on a level that you wouldn't expect from a small team to be able to manage. And so, you know, like some of the stuff we're doing, I'm actually gonna switch real quick because I like to show kind of what we're talking about here. So switch over to the text editor here, and I've got just our avatar component that's just part of the library, right? We were showing that a little bit earlier, so you kind of have an idea of what it looks like. But like this is the portion we're doing. Like we have all of these properties that we're setting up on the component to kind of bring in the information that you're providing on the component for, okay, what do I want my background to be set? What is the width of the avatar set? That kind of thing. But we're doing these kind of neat little like JS docs or TS docs kind of, style comments here. And that's neat in its own right, in that it's like, okay, we're kind of commenting in line, and that's useful while we're editing the file. But it goes so much further, because that's where Sveld comes in. And what it does is it just sort of parses that information straight from the component, and then the output that you're seeing looks like something like this, where you come in here and look at the properties, and you see the width, and it shows the type, and it shows the default value, and it shows the description. All of that is being kind of ascertained from this information, because it's reading the name of the property, the prop here, it's reading the type, which this translates to a string, it's reading whatever the value is, so we saw width 16 here, and then it's dropping in that description that's provided here in line and in the comments. So we don't have to go over to a documentation page to edit the documentation for that property if we rename that, or we change the use case, or we change the default value. A lot of that is just it's just right there, co-located with the property. And it's just, I don't know, it's just, to me, it's a little bit like magic, because it's just solving so many cool problems for us. But
Yeah.
we want to, and it wouldn't be right of us not to kind of give a shout out to Carbon, the Carbon UI system from IBM. They have their own kind of library. Like Google does Material, IBM has Carbon, and it's one or maybe a couple of the developers on their team that have created this tool. But it's a very not something that they're maybe actively maintaining or doing a lot with, and so we've had to do a lot of learning on our side to figure out how to kind of tailor it to our use case and really make it work. So,
Yeah.
so
And I guess one of
kudos
the
on
things,
Nick for helping with a lot of that. So,
but I guess one of the reasons to raise it is, just so that it is on people's radars, because if you're developing for, if you're doing anything beyond hobbyist sort of quick and dirty websites,
yeah,
you're going to love this kind of tool for auto documenting your own library. So it's really going
yes,
to make it a lot easier. So just a good one to have in the back of your mind, when you're sort of looking for that kind of a solution.
yeah. And this is probably a good segue to kind of talk into the next part of this, which is the IntelliSense features that we provide through Skeleton. So you saw earlier when I was trying to kind of type that design token, it was auto suggesting a list of options that we could select there, and then when I hovered that, it was showing a preview of that. And if that was one of these kinds of properties, you would even see like that description that we were just showing for that property. You would see all of that kind of information, the type, the description, default values, all that information presented through that IntelliSense, and it's kind of coming from the same source here. So we're not having, again, to repeat ourselves over and over and over. We set it in one place, and all of these different systems can
Yeah.
use it with the caveat of it's not plug and play. And so again, that's where Nick has come in and just done a tremendous amount of effort and research and everything
Yes.
to figure out the mechanics to make that actually operate and work for folks.
Yeah, I really do think, because it's kind of disconcerting when you hear someone's not even got the Tailwind VS Code extension. You really need that in there to bring up the goodness. So there's actually a couple of levels of IntelliSense that are actually happening in completely unrelated ways. Um, the first one being that any spell kit project out there right now, if you do a build, all of those JS comments will be stripped from all of your components. So this is something we've had to work around, and it was one of those things where in the upstream chain is it being lost? Is it a spell kit problem? Is it a V problem? Is it all the way back in TypeScript? Good luck figuring it out, because TypeScript has over 5,000 open issues that they have not cleaned up in
Yeah,
their backlog.
yeah.
And there was like a 7-year-old post with people excoriating them for,
Yes,
not having
this
this
exact thing.
functionality in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
So clearly, the workaround is to find the undocumented, poorly example TypeScript compiler API and repass all of the components and reinsert them back into the .dt S files. That's ridiculous. It's not something I ever expected to say ever in my life.
yeah,
But we do it for you guys because we know that it makes it easier to sort of, be able to get that documentation straight where you're working and you're focused on doing the stuff.
yeah.
Um,
And I mean,
and then, yeah,
and I think I touched on this and I kind of repeated this. This is kind of like, I don't want to call it our goalposts or kind of our North Star with Skeleton, is that one of the things we've started to kind of really build towards is just keeping things as simple as possible for you, the developer. So, by us shouldering this burden of figuring these things out, you can be more productive because you have this additional information or tooling or whatever just available to you, just turnkey. And so, again, another kind of
well,
nice segue is the other portion that Nick's done for us, which is the CLI, which is,
yeah,
again, fulfilling the same sort of pattern and paradigm that how do we make it as easy as possible to get started and get up and running and just be ready to roll with Skeleton in literally a matter of seconds. It's just kind of mind
Yeah.
blowing.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, this is not a complicated piece of technology. The part that's tricky about it is that you actually have to know what all the config files are doing, what the impacts they're going to have. You're constantly changing, especially before SveldKit went 1.0, you're like,
Yeah.
what's this new thing that they've suddenly put into their config
Suddenly
file?
changed everything with forms or
Yeah,
routing or
I'm suddenly
yeah,
getting CSS warnings,
yeah,
and I'm like, where's this coming from? So it's definitely, being aware of what the different settings would do, and constantly chasing in that regard. But yeah, just as an interesting thing, at the beginning of looking at that, there's obviously the first choice was Svelte had, recommended by the SvelteKit team, and it's been around for ages. Um, but it's one of those things that once you actually start looking into it, and I can guarantee you, Jay that looks after it, was not designing it in a way where somebody else was going to piggyback and lay a UI over the top of it.
yeah,
It's just not something you would naturally think of. But I think we lucked out a lot in that the way Create Svelte is designed is beautiful. There's an API portion, and then there's a completely separated UI portion. So I didn't need to use any of their UI because we handled that all internally in their
mm,
Create Skeleton app. And then we can just pass that Ojo, plain JavaScript object, back into their API and it does it all for us. So
yeah,
and because this is something I've seen come up on the support as well. What's this yet another black box of configuration doing for
yeah,
me? It's really not a lot. There's probably only one opinionated thing that's in there that you don't get a choice of, and it only went in there a couple of days ago. And basically, we always turn on pre-process, and the SvelteKit team has decided to turn that off for JSDoc and non-part checking projects. But that's because we use post CSS. The examples break without post CSS. You're getting post
yeah.
CSS,
We
right?
take out the foot gun, right? We make it easy for you.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I guess the other thing to highlight as well, we will not install into an existing project. We will not touch an existing project. We only set up a new one. And by all means, if you want to see what's going on, do a diff between an empty skeleton project and your current one that's there, so you can sort of reason with what's actually being changed.
Yeah,
But
and
otherwise, if you selected it, you get it. And
and
if you
and
don't, you
and
don't.
I think it was a little early, so I don't know if Nick was able to catch the stream earlier today. We really kind of covered a lot of that. We went into what I did was I essentially went through the whole manual install process and showed all the pain points and all the time it takes and all the config and stuff like that. Which yeah,
And
and also
all the
explained the
support
context
requests.
of why are you doing this thing, not just do this thing, but why are you doing this thing, and then
Yep.
immediately showed the CLI showing it just doing that in X many, like milliseconds or seconds or whatever, kind of thing. And so,
Yep.
it is magic in how fast it works, but it's not magic in what it's doing because it's doing the exact same thing you would have to be required to do to use Skeleton
Yep.
regardless. So
But that leads us to the few little features that maybe we haven't sort of shouted from the rooftops. And that is that unlike Create Svelte, it actually does have a bunch of command line arguments. So unfortunately for NPM, those people are still using that outdated, antiquated technology. If you do the exact same line of the npm create skeleton app at latest, if you do double hyphen h, you'll get a listing of all of the options there. And I think you're not going to use most of them. It's just if you're creating repo all the time, it can make it, you can pre-fill all the choices and it makes it quicker. But I think one of the ones that might be a little bit more interesting for some people is that you can completely point it to your own folder of templates. So
mhm.
we've seen Joy of Code recently just come out with a enterprise skeleton starter kit. I've seen other people on the Discord say, "Hey, I want to set up my own template." You can already do that. You can already point it to an existing standard skeleton app, as it were, and there's really just the adding of a little CSA-meta.json that just has things like the name and the priority listing that it shows in the CLI. And that can be great if you're, trying to get this promoted in a digital agency, or there's, you just want to have a good starter template. You can already just pass that flag in, and it'll do all of the other setup and the install, and then it'll just overlay your template on the top of it. So I think that's an area that's going to expand more. There's some complexities around, for instance, if you want to add Prisma, do we have, we're going to bring in your Prisma file with all of your schema definitions and everything like that. So I just want to sort of look through a little bit more and sort of see how we handle things like package dependencies, extra files that might need to be there as assets, whether any of those configs might conflict with some of the stuff that we need to set up. But yeah, look, I feel that'll be probably dropping pretty soon in terms of go to town, add that stuff in there.
Yeah. And that's one of the areas we don't necessarily have a lot of documentation for yet, is just these kind of extra features that you get from the CLI. So it's this kind of thing that I think you'll probably see some more expansion for us from that, given that we do have such a, predisposition towards document as much as we can and make it as easy as possible. Excuse me.
But also it dovetails nicely in terms of, clearly been talking about Skeleton Labs and the premium themes coming along. I want to test it when we've got more than just two incredibly small and skimpy, starter templates. And I want to see a beefier one in there that we can test out properly and see all the issues that are going to arise before we open it up to the world and go, hey, cause some more support issues for us.
And that's a perfect use case for where a user might want to use this. Is we will have that point where we do have templates that we're providing through Skeleton Labs and that kind of stuff. You snag that, you start a new CLI project, and then you can just kind of reference where that's at, and it just kind of drops all that in. And so you're not having to build a basic project and then start copying these files from the template over, and it's a very complicated process. It's going to be very much quickly be able to pull between those, even if you have a multiple, select those and just kind of drop them in, and then by the time you run your dev server for the first time, you've got an app that you're working with right from the ground up, which is pretty good experience.
And again, I don't really want to envision this going to some of the crazy app modification CLIs that you see in the React and other ecosystems. It's really, we want to start you off at a good place, but it's then still your responsibility to manage things like package updates and being aware of configuration changes upstream. It's just a hell of a lot of work to fully automate that part.
Yeah. But we're always kind of evaluating our options again to make this stuff easier. And our hope is, since we're built on SvelteKit and we're built on Tailwind, we know we're keeping an eye on what's kind of coming down the pipeline. So we know there's a big update to Tailwind in the works, right? And they're potentially rewriting the portions of it and Rust and who knows what kind of crazy stuff. And so our hope is that in this iteration they take into account folks like us that are building these libraries on top of this, and just make it easier for that, so that even if you're going through the manual instructions or you're going through the CLI, the processes that are needing to be run to make that happen can be whittled down as well, just for simplicity's sake. And we'll keep that keep ourselves in the loop to know when that happens, and help everybody along as that kind of along that path.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the other thing I wanted to kind of cover real quick, and I demoed this earlier today, and I think it was on both streams, the early stream and earlier today. But Nick recently helped us set up this new StackBlitz instance of Skeleton, which basically with a button click right here on our homepage launches this tab, and it starts. What all is it doing for us here, Nick? Kind of walk us through it, maybe.
Yeah, look, to be perfectly honest, this was a pretty easy setup and a pretty easy win.
Yeah.
So all I did was literally use the CLI, create two different instances, one with the bare bones template and one with the welcome screen template.
Mm-hmm.
Stick it up in their own repos, and then obviously you've got to do some linking over to the StackBlitz, just for the URLs and stuff like that. And away it goes. So the dearest hope is, and this is of benefit to anyone who wants to be using Skeleton, if you can isolate any issue that you are encountering or you just need some help on, this is the way to do it. Just to be able to have a running example where we can look that in there, because typically our process is, what's your Svelte config? Have you got post CSS? Yeah. What's your layout? Have you got your imports in the right order? Simple things that are easy to overlook. But it's painful for everyone, having to paste it into Discord, having to double check all that before we even get to the issue that you might be encountering. So we can have a live example on the browser ready to go with a rudimentary sort of code editor. Fantastic. Having said that, I'd hate to be coding directly in there. It's like you
kind of get used to having your extensions and stuff like that. So it's not the perfect. It's not what I would mainline every day, but it's definitely something that if you just want to kick the tires, or you want to, like Nick was said, kind of use it in place of like what you might see as the REPL from Sveld, or the Tailwind playground. These kind of tools to just kind of quickly go in here and either test something out, or create a version that you can then share to kind of show a replication of an error that you're having when you're either contributing or just as a normal user. Like there's so many different kind of applications or use cases for a tool like this, but for me, like, it's still a little bit magic, just the fact that it's doing all of this in a browser, and I think the only caveat right now is just that it doesn't work well in Safari, so
and that's to be expected, because all the other issues that Safari gives us it's kind of there's our special charm stuffing up again. But again, this kind of thing they've said is fixed up in the technology previews. I still haven't seen it fixed, but it sounds like they're aware of it, and a fix is coming along soon.
So I didn't have a chance to mention that earlier, so I just wanted to kind of throw that in as, like, if you're a Safari user, hey, maybe open that instance of Firefox or Chrome or something if you got it there. Yep. But okay, well, we've covered a lot here, but I think what we can kind of wrap on is just kind of talking a little bit more about what's next, because clearly we've hit a huge milestone with launching V1 and that going live, today. We've set out, and just so folks understand, we're not just kind of building, this feature and that feature and like, okay, that's good enough, we're done, and let's launch V1. We've had a pretty solid roadmap that we've created and maintained on GitHub that we put out in the open and showcase and that. And we've used that to kind of stub out, we're going to do this feature, we're going to do that feature, we're going to, tweak this or overhaul that and that kind of thing. And we've nailed pretty much every one of those things. There's a couple odds and ends that we just weren't able to squeeze in there right at the tail end, but it's stuff that you will still get. It just might be in a couple weeks instead of today, so not a huge deal, but it sets the stage for, okay, we've done this, we've hit the goalpost, what's next? So So, the short answer is we don't know, but we have a lot of good ideas, and so, I want to talk through some of this, and not so much as like a promise, like we're talking about this thing, it's going to happen. No, but we're in that phase where we're starting to kind of talk through it and start solidifying. Let's put some attention on this. Let's put some attention on that. And some of that's going to be a little bit reactionary of, okay, people are finally coming in, they're using this in production environment. Where are the pain points? What can what can we do to improve that?
That, and I guess the point of actually saying that this is happening now is, if there was ever a time that you wanted to provide feedback or a suggestion, now is it. So we can sort of factor it into the planning and everything like that.
Yeah.
There's the completely obvious ones, autocomplete, when we know that people are gagging for that one and they really want it soon.
Yeah.
Data tables is another one, at least a full skeleton sanctioned. This is the best way to do it. We've evaluated a whole bunch already.
Yes.
Hasn't quite worked.
Yeah.
And I think just also for people to get a bit of a background understanding, the focus hasn't been on as many components as possible, and we have the headline of 3,000 components.
Yeah.
Getting this design token system and the build systems and the production flow, even for the contributors to work with and understand where the hard points are, that had to be done first with just a set of components instead of having to go and say just change all of this now. We've got 600 components to update. That's just unworkable. So I think we're in a really good place now where the systems, the processes, and the tech, really gelled nicely. And I think our DX is in an awesome spot that we can now go, we're a lot more open now to just bringing in extra components that aren't a pain to dock and aren't a pain to support, going forward.
Because I like to think of it as like a foundation, right? Like we now have the foundation, set, and so we can start building up on top of that. And so you'll most likely see that as we'll be focusing a little bit more on features and stuff like that. And I'm not saying these things are trivial. Like the autocomplete is not trivial. The data tables are not trivial, but there are some kind of low-hanging fruit of like little things that maybe somebody needs or wants that just is not in there, and we can try to get that in there because we now are not so crazy busy trying to focus on building again that foundation. We now have that, and we know exactly like if I'm going to build a component, here's how I build it. Here's the very specific style guide that we follow, and how we integrate it for Sveld, and how it plays into the design token system, and all of these things. And so all of that can kind of work in unison to, allow us to very quickly produce a lot of these kind of new features and these new, components and things like that. So I'm really excited to see, just how many of those we have, because we have a good backlog of feature requests of folks saying, hey, I'd love to see this, or hey, I'd love to see that. And now we kind of finally have that opportunity to start kind of working through some of that. So.
Yeah, and I guess now would also be the kind of thing. I know there could be hesitancy or over exuberance in trying to just submit whatever, but it'd be great to hear from people that maybe aren't so involved in terms of what do they need, either doc-wise or example-wise, or do you need some more YouTube tutorials on a step-by-step on, like we were saying before, adapting from Tailwind UI or Flowbite or something like that.
Yeah.
Not only for them to use in their own projects, but to then contribute it back to the wider pool and make it more valuable to everyone. So that's always been their sort of root goal and the root desire of working on this project.
Yeah, and then and it's not, and you put it perfectly. Like it's a great opportunity to provide your feedback. But it's also a really good opportunity to jump in if you want to be a contributor, because we're always looking for more help with building stuff out and that kind of thing. It's not a hold it, wait, we're still trying to finalize this thing so that you can finally start building that. It's that's ready to go. Here's how we would do it. Here's the specs or things like that we would kind of expect you to follow, and you can take that and hit the ground running, and again, the sky's kind of the limit with that. There's lots of ways we can approach that. But if you are interested in contributing, I'm just going to kind of give this kind of a quick shout out. We do have a way for you to kind of come on here and view our contributing section. So just under Docs Contributing, and we have a section for if it's your first time contributing ever. You can read through some guides for how to do that. You can read through our requirements for how do I send, how do I name my branch and conventions and things like that. We have style guides for updating the, writing the components and the properties and that kind of stuff. Some of this we're probably going to still need to update a little bit, but just since we've sort of finalized a bit of that. And then just how to document. So that stuff we were talking about with Sveld and things like that. We have some documentation around, how do I implement that? How do I use that? How do I document an event instead of a prop or something like that? So it covers a lot of ground, and it's a pretty good wealth of information in there, just just quickly at a glance if you're interested.
Yeah, and a lot of it's applicable to open source in general. So don't think that you're just learning a skeleton specific version of it. This is if you have an interest in coding, whether it's for building up your own CV or reputation or whatever it is that you're going for, this is just good general advice that will apply pretty widely, even in private situations as well, just general good coding principles. But I'd also say, as a general approach, if you sort of just discovered Skeleton last week, probably not the best idea to start
Kick the
submitting straight away.
tires,
You
try it
probably
out,
want to
build a
build
project. Yeah.
yeah. Like if you've got it working in your own project and it's like looking, you're like, yeah, this is pretty good and I want to share it. That's the kind of thing that we want to see. You know, you've already put it through the paces, done some testing, some usability on it. That's going to greatly increase the odds of it sort of coming in.
Yeah. And the just we're kind of getting the tail end of this, so we'll kind of just start wrapping up here a little bit. But I did want to kind of just drop a little bit of like expectations over the next couple of weeks, because again, we've gone through kind of a real extensive sprint to kind of get to this mile marker of the V1. And so, like, me speaking personally, like, I've been working for like 2 weeks straight, so I need a break. So
Yes.
understand, like, we are going to be checking Discord, we're going to be checking support tickets, we're going to help you out if you're new and just getting started and that kind of thing. But the development side is going to take a little break from a few days, a week, or something like that. Not we're not gone for a month or anything. But we're going to ease back into that, and that we're going to the first things we're going to do is one, kind of discuss internally, like, this things, setting this kind of new roadmap, right? Like, what do we want to do, and then we have the things that we know we absolutely must do or want to do to open up the avenues that we've kind of discussed with, like, stuff that's going on with Skeleton Labs, and things that we need to do. It's a lot of it's like housekeeping. Like, I was listening to a talk from Rich Harris talking about them kind of diving into the new version of Svelte 4. And they're kind of going through the same process, right? He's just now switching from SvelteKit back over to focus and attention on Svelte. And so they're doing maintenance releases, they're doing housekeeping, they're doing stuff like considering like moving things to like a monorepo type format, implementing change sets. And it's like all these things I was like, oh, that's us too. So we're right in that kind of same sort of mindset right now. And so if you're somebody that is familiar with doing some of this stuff, or these kind of conventions, please come in and help, because we're not necessarily experts in all these. We're kind of learning some of this as we go, but it's great to be able to draw that knowledge from somebody that has treaded that path already before. So
absolutely. And again, we're not doing it just to sort of keep up with trends or anything like that. It's just we know that it takes a lot to put together that README on every release every 2 weeks. And something like change sets, where it pushes back a little bit of the creation of that README onto the actual committers, rather than poor Chris having to try and summarize it from all of the
it's a very manual process. So
there's that, and then there's just some practical things like the mono repo. If you want to be able to have a mixture of private and public repos all working together, it's kind of the only option. So, if there's other people that have got experiences and set it all up, love to hear from you. Just whether it's just don't do this because it's a minefield. That's the kind of stuff we want to hear. But
absolutely.
I don't think it's massive. I think we're in a pretty good spot where it is.
And like I said, it's just we're setting the kind of setting it up so that we can continue to kind of just dive back into this next phase and kind of work towards the V2 or what have you, these kind of long-term goals that we want to set and be able to achieve that. And so some of the just specifics you might see is, like, right now the library itself and the documentation are co-located. They're one project, right? And so we might be splitting that up and that kind of thing. So just kind of be keeping an eye on GitHub and Discord and that kind of thing, and you'll start seeing us kind of discussing some of that, of what's coming up and what how we're tackling it and what we're kind of working through.
And then, of course, there's going to be getting the virtual crowbars while we sit around Adrian and go, "Where's the Paris CSS?"
Yeah.
No pressure, Adrian. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But no, again, there's some really cool stuff like that it's just not quite ready for prime time, but it's going to be pretty awesome when
Yeah.
it comes out.
Yeah. And I mean, we're just, again, we're gonna take a little breather and enjoy what we've worked on, because I've personally been at this for, I think it's a our 1 year anniversary of starting the project was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. So like a
Yep.
year in, and some change, and just I want to evaluate and see like what can we really do with this, and we need to put some planning and some prep and some of the stuff I was talking about with like templates and stuff like that, and just make sure we can execute that in a really nice and friendly and usable way. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
but I think with that, Nick, thank you for joining me. Like, I think this has been
You're
great.
most welcome.
We've covered, again, a ton of information and some really cool stuff, and tease a little bit of what's kind of coming down the road. So, hoping that can get some people excited and kind of ready to join us in this journey. So,
Yeah, definitely looking forward to where this goes. It's been quite fun so far, and it's looking like it's going to stay that way. So it's
yeah,
good.
yeah. All right, everybody. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap here. Just so you know, we have recorded these, both the morning stream and the evening stream. So if you want to go back and watch, those will be on YouTube, and we'll be working to kind of process those and put timestamps and just make it easier for you to find what section you're looking for. So be on the lookout for that for the next couple days. And then other than that, thank you everybody for joining. Thanks to Nick again. Thanks to Rhys and Dom this morning for being the guests and coming down here and joining me. Thanks to our core team for everybody, everything you've been doing to kind of contribute and make things better, and helping everybody out, and our moderators for the community, and just supporters, and just the folks using it. Like, it's, my mind is still blown that, hey, anybody's using it, much less as many people are using it as they are. So I am so grateful and appreciative, and thank you. So thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
See you later.